So, hello and welcome to A2K Online Church. Thank you for being with us today. Our church is not just another videotape YouTube ministry. We have fellowship during the week, we pray for each other, we stay connected over social media, and we even meet up in person on occasion. If you are a biblical Unitarian or just someone who wants to know God better, please join us. Yep, that looks like it's sharing. Today's presentation is the second and last part of the Living for God series. In part one, we explored Deuteronomy 6:5, loving God with all that we are, a call to covenantal loyalty, not just emotion, deepened by knowing Him through the guiding of the Spirit. If you have not yet seen that presentation, I recommend that you do, as it provides a deeper foundation to what we're going to talk about today. Here in part two, we will be exploring what it means to care for others as much as oneself, a principle closely linked to wholehearted commitment to a greater purpose. The presentation offers a look at how these ideas connect and play out in everyday life. So, section 1, Foundation, God's Love and Command. So, at the heart of this presentation lies a single idea that ties everything together. Loving your neighbor as yourself isn't a separate task from loving God. It's part of the same fabric. When Jesus lays out what matters most, he doesn't split these into two different categories. He weaves them into one essential call, as you can see there from Mark 12:29 to 31. It's a way of living that flows together, where devotion to God, engaging our whole being, our emotions, spirit, intellect, and actions, naturally spills over into how we treat those around us. As we saw in part one, this holistic love starts with giving all of ourselves to God, and from there it extends outward. This isn't a new concept. It's been part of God's design for his people for a long time, starting as a rule to keep their community strong and fair. Back then, it was about the folks you'd see every day, the ones tied to you by shared promises. But Jesus doesn't leave it there. He takes that idea and stretches it, using the story of the Good Samaritan, a man helping someone he'd normally avoid, a stranger, even an outsider, to show that a neighbor is anyone who crosses your path, anyone with a need. This broader scope builds on what came before, turning a local practice into a universal one. What makes this possible? What drives it is something bigger than us. It begins with God's own move towards humanity, a care so deep that it sets everything in motion. He's not waiting for us to figure it out first. He steps in with a love that doesn't pick favorites, but reaches out to everyone. That's the root of it all. His action towards us shapes how we are meant to respond, both to him and to the people he's placed in our lives. Knowing him through understanding his character and experiencing his presence, as we explored in part one, fuels this love. It's not just a rule to follow. It's a pattern that starts with what he's already done, pushing us to live it out in a way that reflects where it came from. So there on the screen, you can see the verses that relate to that. But let's move on. Again, you've got a copy of these presentation notes if you do want to come back to them. So, God's family. God's relationship with us starts with a closeness that's almost hard to picture now. He doesn't just toss the world together and call it done. He shapes us with purpose, putting a piece of himself into who we are, like a family tie baked right in. It's a deliberate move, setting us up to be near him, part of his circle from the very beginning. That connection doesn't last though. Early on, one choice, taking what we had been commanded not to, breaks it wide open. It's not a minor slip, it's a real fracture, cutting us off from the one who made us. The distance isn't just a feeling, it's a wall that leaves us outside what we were built for. You might think that would be the end, but it's not. God doesn't turn away. Instead, he keeps at it, moving through time with a steady hand, molding, guiding, pulling us back towards him. It's not a rushed fix, it's a patient effort, like a parent who won't let go of a child who's wandered off. He then sends us his son. It's not about patching things up quick. It's about opening a way back, not just as creations, but as family with a place to belong. This isn't forced. It's an offer, a chance to come home, rooted in a care that's been there since the start, waiting for us to see it and step in. So let's next look at God's character and our purpose. So, God's nature isn't something you can pin down to one simple trait. It's a blend of qualities that work together to show who he is, shaping how we live. First off, he's completely set apart, free of anything flawed or tainted. This purity isn't just a detail, it's what defines him, making him stand out from everything else we know. Because of that, anything off the mark, any wrongdoing, can't fit with him. It's not about being overly strict. It's a standard that calls us to change, to reflect something higher, our aligning ourselves with his righteousness. That's only part of it though. Alongside that purity, he's got a love that runs deep, a care that doesn't hold back. It's not something he switches on when it suits him. It's woven into him, driving how he deals with us. This love isn't waiting for us to earn it. It's there from the beginning, steady, even when we are not. Knowing him this way, both through facts about his nature and the experience of his presence, pulls us closer, transforming how we see him and others. Then there's his compassion. He's not quick to drop the hammer when we stumble. Instead, he leans towards fixing things, offering a way back rather than pushing us out. It's a kindness that's active, looking to lift us up instead of letting us fall apart. But there's a firm side too. He keeps things fair. He doesn't let actions slide. They matter to him, and he makes sure they're accounted for. This isn't harshness. It's a balance we are meant to mirror in our own lives, reflecting his justice. Even with that, he looks at us and sees something worth keeping. We're not just extras to him. He puts real value on us, enough to step in when we couldn't sort it out ourselves. It's this mix, purity, love, fairness, that shows why he wants us close and why we are called to live in a way that lines up with it. Knowing and reflecting his character isn't just about admiring him. It's about becoming people who carry his traits into the world, toward and everyone else. So our purpose. God doesn't just bring us into his family and call it a day. He's got reason for us being there, a purpose that's built into the plan from the start. It's not about sitting back or coasting through. It's about doing things that make a real difference, actions that leave the world better than we found it. He shapes us with this in mind, like a craftsman working on something meant to stand out. This isn't random. There's a set of good things laid out for us, tailored to who we are and what He's about. These deeds aren't just tasks to keep us busy. They're a way of letting what's inside come out, showing the care He's poured into us through how we treat others. It's not about earning a place, it's about living out what's already there, a natural result of being His. We're not left to figure it out on our own either. He's in on it, setting us up with what we need to make it happen. It's not all on our shoulders. There's a push from Him, a nudge that makes us want to do it and gives us the strength to follow through. It's a team effort where He's already laid the tracks and we get to walk them. This purpose isn't an afterthought. It's why we're here, a call to fill our time with something that lasts, something that fits His bigger picture. So, yeah, you see that there in Ephesians 2:10 about our purpose. It's stated there very clearly. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Isn't that great? So, righteousness and loving others. God doesn't leave us in the dark about what it means to live His way. It's laid out in a way that's straightforward, even if it's not always easy to do. It starts with keeping things fair, making sure we treat people right, no exceptions, absolutely no exceptions. This isn't about playing favourites or letting things slide. It's a steady commitment to fairness that shapes how we act. Then there's the push to care deeply. It's not enough to be nice when it's convenient. This isn't about choosing kindness. This is about choosing kindness, sticking with it, even when it's tough or someone lets us down. It's a deliberate choice to value compassion, to keep reaching out instead of turning away. Underneath it all is a way of being, not loud or showy, but steady and simple, staying close to God without making a fuss about it. That quiet focus keeps us grounded, guiding how we move through everything else. When it comes to others, this isn't just ideas on paper. It's love that does something, modeled after the one who showed us how it's done. It's not a small effort. It's giving ourselves the way we've been given to, reaching out with a care that doesn't stop. God's not setting a narrow limit here. He's got His eyes on everyone, not wanting anyone to miss out. He's holding off, giving space for people to come around, and that shapes how we're supposed to see them too, living in a way that keeps the invitation open for anybody who'll take it. So you can see there in the verses that what's absolutely key is that verse in Micah 6:8 that tells us exactly what God expects from us: acting justly, loving mercy, and walking humbly with our God. So yeah, moving on. So, living as God's family now and forever. Living as God's family is not something we do on our own. It's group effort. It's a community drawing strength from being connected. We're not all cut from the same cloth, and that's by design. Everyone's got something unique to bring, like parts of a bigger setup that works better together because they're different. It's not about being the same. It's about how those differences fit into a whole that holds strong. What we've each got isn't just for ourselves. It's for pitching in where it counts. Some folks are good at lifting spirits, others at sorting out the practical stuff, and that's not by chance. Those abilities are there to help the people around us, to make the whole group better off. It's not about keeping it to ourselves. It's about putting it out there where it's needed. That means keeping an eye on each other too, not just coasting along, but really checking in. We're there to give a boost when somebody's struggling or a nudge when they're off track, and they do the same for us. It's a back and forth that keeps us moving forward together. It gets practical too. When someone's short on something like food or a place to stay, we don't just sit on what we've got. We pass it along, not out of duty, but because it's what makes sense, what feels natural in a family. This isn't a once in a while thing. It's about sticking close enough to know what's up, caring in a way that lasts, making sure nobody's left hanging. So you can see there in the verses there, you'll see Paul talking about being the one body with many parts. And you'll see from Romans as well, we've got the different gifts that are given. Yeah. So these are things to contribute to others and their well-being too, just as it can come back to us when we need it. Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't also mention Judgment Day, because there is a moment coming when everything we've covered hits its mark, a time when God's plan comes full circle and things settle for good. It's about being ready, and that readiness isn't something we patch together ourselves. It's tied to what Jesus did, stepping in to clear out what doesn't belong, making us fit to stand before God. But it's not just handed to us without any say. We've got a part to play. It's about taking that offer, turning towards it, letting it shift how we live. That's what gets us there, ready to step into what's waiting. For those who do, it's a homecoming, a time when the family God's been building finally comes together, close and complete, with nothing holding it back. There's another side though. For those who don't take it, who turn away, it ends differently, not with a welcome, but with a cut-off that sticks. It's not a light thing. It's final, an end that we would not wish on anyone. Knowing this doesn't sit easy. There's a lift to it, a real happiness for what's ahead if we are part of that family, a sense that it's all heading somewhere good. But it comes with a weight too, a sadness that hits close when it's people we know, then stretches out to everyone else who hasn't found their way. It's a tug both ways, celebrating what we've got and aching for what others might miss, all mixed with a hope that it doesn't have to end like that for them. Let's try to lift it up a little bit again. Um, living and shining now. So living God's way isn't just about waiting for that final day. It's about what we do right now, making it real every day. It means keeping things fair and kind, letting those traits show up in our actions so people notice something different. It's not tucked away. It's out there in the open, a way of living that doesn't blend into the background. That kind of life stands out, showing who we are tied to by how we treat others. It's a quiet signal, drawing people in without forcing it, just by being what we are meant to be. There's a steadiness we carry too, a calm that holds even when things get shaky. People pick up on that, and when they ask what's behind it, we've got a chance to point them to the hope that keeps us going. It's not about preaching, it's about sharing what's real when the moment's right. We're not doing this alone, though. There's a strength inside that keeps us steady. The Spirit nudges us along and reminds us where we fit. Beyond that, we've got someone in our corner, stepping up for us when we can't stand on our own, making sure we're not left hanging. Our intercessor with God, our Lord Jesus Christ. Even the tough stuff plays a part. Those hard times that test us aren't wasted. They shape us, trimming what doesn't belong and building what lasts, getting us ready for whatever's ahead. It's all working together, living right, shining out with a support that doesn't quit, pushing us to love in a way that might just bring others along. So, it's not the longest presentation today, but let's reflect a little bit and think about our response to this. So, looking back at everything we've covered, it all ties into one core idea. Loving our neighbour as ourselves is bound up with loving God, forming a single way of life. It starts with a call that doesn't split the two apart. It's the heartbeat of what we're here for, laid out, clear and simple. Love God and love your neighbour. Behind that call is a bigger story. God wanting us close from the start, seeing us as his own, even when we stepped away. He doesn't let that distance stand. He moves to bring us back, making us family through a care that holds steady no matter what. That care comes from who he is, pure and unshaken, loving enough to reach out, fair enough to keep things straight. It's not just about him, though. It's about us too. He's got a purpose for us, a reason we're here that fills our time with actions that matter, that make a difference. Living that out is guesswork. It's about fairness, kindness, staying grounded with him, letting that shape how we treat everyone. We don't do it solo either. We're in it together, growing as a group that's stronger because we're connected, helping each other along. It's all heading somewhere, a time when those who've stuck with him come home for good, while those who don't face a different end. Until then, we've got a job to live in a way that stands out, backed up by everything he gives us to keep it going. It's a big picture, but it boils down to this. We are his, and that changes how we see and act towards everyone else. So, practical applications. All this we've covered. What God's done, who we are, where it's going, isn't meant to just stay in our heads. It's supposed to show up in what we do every day. Start simple. Really hear people out. Give them your time. Catch what they're going through without jumping in too quick with your own words. It's about being there, letting them know they're seen and heard. Then there's the everyday stuff. Stepping in when someone needs something, whether it's a meal, a lift, or just a bit of help with the small things. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It's the steady, quiet help that adds up over time. Holding on to hurts won't cut it either. Letting go of those slights, whether they're minor or major, keeps things clear between you and them, making room for something better. Everyone's got something they're good at. Maybe it's fixing things, listening well, or sorting out a problem. And that's not just for you. Put it to work for someone else. Help them along. Build them up with what you've got. Stick close with others on this path too. Get together regularly, not just when it fits your schedule. It's how you get to know each other, care deeper, and keep the connection real. That closeness means sharing what you have, not keeping extra tucked away, but passing it along when you see the gap, letting it flow where it's needed. Don't stay quiet about what keeps you steady either. When the chance comes, talk about it, not pushy, but straight so they can see what's holding you up. Through it all, keep lifting them up, even when they're not there to hear it. Think about what they need and ask for it through prayer, day in and day out. These aren't one-time things. They're ways to live that start now and grow over time, pulling others in as you go, showing a love that's real and lasting. So, thank you for being with us today. If you're watching this presentation on YouTube and are not yet a part of our online church, please consider joining us, and see you again soon. Bye for now.